Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over how to be successful in team game modes in Fortnite. Even though solos is probably the single most popular game mode in Fortnite, when you combine duos, trios, and squads, there's surely more total players playing those modes at any given time. Plus, based on the info that we've gotten from Fortnite recently, it seems like when it comes to the competitive side of things, we're going to be getting less major solo events and more major team mode events going forward. I don't think it's a secret to anybody that when it comes to being successful in duos, trios, or squads, it really requires a very different set of skills and mindset than what it takes to be successful in solos. It's a big reason why you'll see players winning solo events and cash cups all the time, but then they'll not even place in a duos or trios FNCS and vice versa. I think the tips in this video are going to apply fairly equally to both public matches and competitive, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so the first tip that's absolutely crucial for success in team game modes is sort of knowing or even straight up defining each player's role and making sure that it revolves around their biggest strengths as a player. This tip probably applies slightly more to the competitive or arena side of things, but it's definitely also important for just regular public matches as well. Something that'll pretty much surefire prevent your team from being as good as possible is if everybody plays almost the same exact way. You can have 3 pretty darn talented players on a team, but if all of them are just super aggressive players that are great at close range fighting but shaky at everything else, sure, you'll win a solid amount of fights, but the downsides are pretty overwhelming as well. You're basically totally exposed to getting third-partied since every player on your team is right in the middle of the action. You're going to struggle making smart rotations and repositions. Your team is probably going to be so over-aggressive that it'll get you into a lot of bad situations. The list really goes on and on. This is why pretty much all the top duos and trios in competitive have well-defined roles for every player on the team. It's why if you follow a good amount of pros on Twitter, you're bound to see a tweet when someone's looking for a teammate that says something like, looking for a trio for FNCS, I'm an IGL looking for 2 fraggers or something. These players know that you don't just want the most talented teammates you can find, you need teammates that are going to amplify your strengths, cover your weaknesses, and obviously you're hoping to do the same for them. So now that you hopefully understand the importance of roles in team modes, let's talk about the 3 main ones. The 2 that pretty much everybody knows are IGL, which stands for In-Game Leader, and Slayer or Fragger. Then there's a third one that most people refer to as Support. You definitely need an IGL and you definitely need a Fragger, those 2 are locks. But then for the 3rd or 4th spot, that really comes down to preference. Some teams will go with an IGL, Fragger, and a Support. Some teams will have an IGL and 2 fraggers, with the IGL taking more of a support role. And then for squads with 4 players, there's obviously going to be even more variety. So starting off with the main role and responsibilities of an IGL, this is basically going to be the point guard or quarterback of your team. They're always going to be the player who makes the final decision anytime there's one to be made. So in the early game, the typical responsibilities of an IGL would be calling out where to land, telling players where they should go and loot, choosing which buildings to push if there are any singled out enemies, stuff like that. For mid-game, it's along the same lines basically, choosing which fights to take and not take, calling out when to rotate or disengage, and where exactly to rotate or disengage to, and then in the end game, obviously same deal with rotating, but the IGL is typically going to be the player who tunnels for the team with their teammates following close behind. Also, the IGL should be the one determining how the team should use movement items like shockwaves or bouncers. The fragger role is a little bit more straightforward as a whole. In the early game, you want to be the one leading the way on every push that your team decides to make. In the mid game, same deal, and if you're playing competitive, the fragger should also be the one responsible for getting storm surge tags. And in a competitive end game is probably where the fragger is really the most important. Here, you need to make sure to get enough picks to refresh your team's mats so you can continue to safely rotate. Also, it's probably a smart strategy to make sure that the fragger is given the highest rarity weapons that that your team has, but I get if you're just playing a regular pub or something like that, your teammates may not be down for doing that. And then the support player's role is a little less well defined as the other two roles are. You're not the one making the main callouts and decisions, and you're also not the one mainly responsible for getting picks, but you do ideally want to do a little bit of both. And I like to personally call this role a backline support because I think it describes the job a little bit better. You're the person who should be playing in the back of your team, dealing chip damage in chaotic fights with your AR, and basically communicating to the other players what you're seeing because you're going to have a much better view of the fight since you're further back. Having a set team comp like this makes it so that everybody knows who's responsible for what, no matter how chaotic it gets. And when you're in team fights, it also allows you to have nice spacing as a team, because the last thing you want is all 4 players to be building to high ground, you're blocking each other off, and basically making it harder to actually track the enemies you're fighting. Another aspect of playing as a team that's absolutely crucial is looking to create numerical advantages in fights. Unlike maybe Call of Duty, for example, it's very hard to win 1v2 or 2v3 fights due to the high amount of health that each player has, and also the obvious defensive capabilities of building and editing. So one of the easiest ways to win team fights, even if you're outskilled, is to actually close the skill gap by singling out and focusing a specific player on the enemy team. This right here is why having someone calling the shots and coordinating things with a decent view of the fight is really important. A few weeks ago, I was actually watching some trios footage of Clix because his trios are always super entertaining, and I noticed this consistent pattern of how they would quickly get a pick in fights super frequently. Ideally, they would get a little bit of tag damage on a specific player, which would then make them retreat a bit and box up to heal, and as soon as that happened, Clix and another player would immediately start pressuring that player's box. At the same time, the third player on the trio would be close enough to them to provide support on the player they were pressuring if needed, but his main role was to spray the other 2 players and prevent them from getting to and helping their teammate that was now isolated in a 1v2. Obviously, this strategy is going to work better for them than an average team because Clix and his teammates are so insanely talented that they can win 2v1s almost instantly, but even average players will have a lot of success if they can consistently get into these situations where they have the numbers advantage. However, you also have to make sure that you're constantly communicating with your teammates the entire time, because think about it like this: if you're 2v1ing someone in a trios fight, a smart coordinated team may try to even the playing field by then 2v1ing your backline support player. That's also why mobility items are so important in team modes as well, because they allow you to almost instantly reposition and regroup in any fight, no matter how chaotic it is. Even if you do get singled out, as long as you have a shockwave or a couple of bouncers, you can usually get back to your teammates while only taking little or even no damage in the process. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down in the comment section below. Let me know what your favorite team game mode is in Fortnite. Is it duos, trios, or squads? Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.